It was my junior year at Southern Lehigh High School in Pennsylvania, and honestly, I had no clue what I was walking into. Being new was hard enough, but starting right in the middle of the year, when everyone already had their clique sorted out, was brutal. I thought I had prepared myself mentally, but I wasn't ready for the cafeteria at lunchtime. The rule was juniors couldn't leave campus for lunch, unlike the seniors. That meant eating in the cafeteria with literally no one I knew. I could already feel the weight of isolation pressing down on me as I carried my tray, scanning the room for an empty seat. Every table was packed with laughing groups, friends chatting and passing snacks like they'd known each other for a decade. I felt invisible, like an extra in someone else's life. I started to panic slightly. Sitting alone wasn't an option, not with the seniors giving junior tables the stink eye. Then I saw it, a table tucked in the corner, two kids sitting side by side. They looked approachable enough, not part of the intimidating clusters of athletes or theater kids. I walked over, trying to appear casual. "Can I sit here?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. They exchanged a glance. One of them, the taller twin, shrugged. "Sure." That's how I met Antonio and Bruno. They were identical twins, partly Hispanic, I think, though they didn't have accents. Their personalities balanced each other perfectly. One was quieter, thoughtful, while the other was loud, teasing, and always grinning. They welcomed me, joked around a bit, and by the end of lunch, they invited me to hang out that night. I hesitated. Cemetery at night? It sounded sketchy, but also, I had nothing else to do. What could go wrong? By 9 p.m., I was walking the dark path toward the cemetery. Leaves crunched under my sneakers, and every snapping twig made me jump. The night was unusually still, the air cold enough to make my breath visible. Bruno had sent a location pin, a small lake hidden in the woods. According to him, it was a cool hangout spot. As I reached the road leading into the cemetery, I texted him, "Here? Where are you guys?" His reply was immediate. "In the woods." "Lake. Follow the path. I'll light the way." The problem was his light was just a weak phone flashlight, barely illuminating the path ahead. The forest seemed endless, shadows twisting into grotesque shapes. Every step made my heart beat faster, but I pushed on. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, but definitely approaching. I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Bruno? Antonio?" No response. Just the crunch of leaves closer and closer. I told myself it was them messing around, trying to scare me, but my gut twisted into knots. The footsteps sped up. Panic surged. Before I could react, nails dug into my neck. I gasped, clawing at whoever was gripping me. "Grab him! Grab him!" I heard a familiar voice, shouting with a manic edge. I tore free and ran, sprinting as fast as my legs could carry me. The forest became a blur. By the time I reached the road, whoever it was had stopped chasing me, or at least slowed down. I ran straight home, chest heaving, hands shaking uncontrollably. The next day at school, my parents and I decided to report the incident. With Bruno's texts as evidence, the school acted swiftly. Both twins were expelled. My parents made me block their numbers. Safe, right? Not quite. About a week later, I woke in the middle of the night to icy air blowing across my room. My window was wide open. I was positive my parents hadn't touched it. It was too cold, too high. My father had always told me about the ledge beneath the window for fire escape purposes. I shivered, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on me. I knocked on my parents' door. My mom was groggy. "Did you open my window?" I asked. "No," she said, shaking my dad awake. "Grow up." "It's nothing," he muttered, but my instinct screamed otherwise. When I returned to my room, I noticed something strange. My door, which I had left fully open, was now half shut. That's when I saw it. Someone crouched behind the door. I screamed, my voice tearing through the house. The door slammed shut just as my father burst into the room. A leg, a human leg, vanished out the window. My dad ran outside, but came back empty-handed. Whoever it had been, I knew. The twins. The police could do nothing without evidence. We installed locks, considered cameras, but the sense of vulnerability lingered for months. A few years later, I found myself in a high school band where things weren't much safer. Mr. Nicholson, the band teacher, was normally pleasant, But the basement of the music department was a different story. Sparse light, dusty storage rooms, and strange echoes created the perfect breeding ground for fear. I had to make up some missed lessons and was allowed to practice in one of the basement storage rooms during lunch. The lights flickered, the narrow hallway seemed endless, and I was alone. My phone barely lit the space. Then I heard it, a container being dragged. Labored breathing, grunts, human but not quite human. Shadows moved just at the edge of my vision. My hand froze on the doorknob. A presence. Something watching me. I fled upstairs, my phone illuminating just enough of the hall to see a figure slip into the shadows. Mr. Nicholson called security. No one was found. The memory of that night, the cold, the shadows, stayed with me. Weeks later, my friends and I made a foolish plan. Sneak into the school at night. The basement window was broken, the metal gate adding a false sense of security. Crawling through, we explored. Dark hallways, faint exit signs, and empty classrooms became our playground of fear. One friend went into a bathroom stall. My phone rang. Chris, asking where I was. I panicked, and then I heard it, a laugh, low and cruel, from the stall. Someone stood on the toilet, watching me. Screaming, we regrouped, racing back through the basement. Doors slammed, shadows lurked, footsteps echoed behind us. Out the window, over the gate, and we were free. The red glow of the exit signs seemed to mock us from inside. Whatever had been in that school that night, I didn't want to know. I never went back, not even once. Looking back, I realized how easily curiosity almost got me killed. Trust was fragile, fear was sharp, and the world outside the cafeteria walls was darker than I ever imagined. The twins, the basement, the lake. Every encounter was a lesson in caution, a reminder that some friendships are not worth the risk, some schools hold secrets in their shadows, and some nights are better left unwalked. Freshman year at Southern Lehigh High School had already been a whirlwind of stress, confusion, and awkward social moments. I was barely surviving gym class, band rehearsals, and navigating hallways that felt like a maze designed to humiliate me. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for Mr. Daniels. It was the last period of the day, gym class. The sky outside was gray, stormy, and heavy with rain. Our regular teacher was absent, and an older substitute, maybe 55 or 60, took attendance with a kind of quiet authority that immediately made me uneasy. He paused at my name, squinting as if trying to place me. I shrugged, hoping he'd move on. Okay, class, let's get into our volleyball teams, he said, voice calm but with an odd undertone, almost like he was savoring every word. He disappeared down the hall toward the locker rooms. The next 40 minutes were uneventful, or at least I thought. We played, laughed, and awkwardly tripped over each other while the storm outside pounded on the gym windows. Finally, the period ended. I went to my locker to change. That's when it started. My locker wouldn't open. I tried the usual combination over and over, twisting, pulling, jiggling. Nothing. Frustration rose, but then I realized the substitute had gone to get the master list of combinations. A few minutes later, he returned with a small book of locker numbers. Let's try yours, he said. I expected him to just punch in the combo, but something about the way he lingered felt off. Too slow, too deliberate. And when he tried, the locker didn't open. He laughed lightly. Huh, that's odd. He touched my shoulder, not brusquely, but in a way that made me freeze. I forced a smile, hoping he'd stop, but instead his hand slowly slid down my back. My stomach dropped. I yanked myself away. I have to catch my bus, I muttered. Finally, the locker clicked open. He smiled at me, just a normal smile, and walked away. I thought it was over. I was wrong. The room went dark suddenly. All the lights cut out, plunging the locker room into shadows. My heart raced. I grabbed my backpack, feeling around blindly, my phone weakly illuminating the aisle. I saw movement, someone at the end of the row of lockers, crouched, just standing there. I froze. Then I heard it, a soft, animal-like breathing, dragging sounds, footsteps that didn't match the normal rhythm of someone walking. I stumbled toward the door, heart hammering, hand gripping my phone like a weapon. The figure in the shadows didn't move initially, but then a hand patted my shoulder twice, hard, and started squeezing. I screamed, yanking at the doorknob. The person tried to push the door shut, but I was already out, running toward the stairs leading to the main gym level. My phone was flickering in my hand, casting weak light across the hallway. When I reached the gym, the substitute was gone. Mr. Nicholson, our band teacher, had nothing to do with it. He was nowhere near the gym. I told the security team everything, but they found no one. Nothing. Just my story, shaky, half-formed, but real. Even after that, I couldn't shake the feeling. That locker room, that hallway, someone had been there. Someone had watched me. Weeks passed. I threw myself into band to distract myself from the fear. Our band teacher, Mr. Nicholson, was strict but fair, and he had a weird charm that made students trust him blindly. It was during one of my lunch practices that the next incident happened. I was supposed to make up missed lessons in a small storage room in the basement of the music department. The basement was dimly lit, musty, and almost always empty. I could barely hear the faint hum of fluorescent lights above. I set up my music stand and pulled out my phone to play games while waiting for Mr. Nicholson to arrive. That's when the lights went out. Complete darkness. The quiet was unbearable. I heard a dragging noise, like a big plastic container being moved across the floor, and heavy breathing, almost growling. I froze. My mind screamed that this wasn't part of the school, that this was something else entirely. I peeked around the corner. In the shadows, I saw a figure pushing one of the containers into the hallway. Something about the way it moved, stiff, unnatural, deliberate, made my stomach turn. I turned off my phone, hid in the nearest room, and prayed for the lights to come back. They didn't. The figure was just there, waiting, watching. Finally, I bolted for the stairs, my phone flickering just enough to show me the path. My heart was pounding, sweat running down my back, and my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the doorknob. The figure tried to push the door, closed behind me, but I got out. Upstairs, the lights returned, and security came to check. Nothing. No one. Just moved equipment and a lingering sense of dread. Not long after, my friends and I decided, in retrospect, a terrible idea. Sneak into the school basement at night. There was a broken window, a short metal gate, and a foolish sense of adventure. We crawled inside, the basement cold and dark. My flashlight barely cut through the shadows. We dispersed, exploring the maze of storage rooms, maintenance areas, and abandoned offices. I followed one friend into a bathroom. He whispered, "Let's go upstairs." I nodded, and just as we started moving, my phone rang. Chris, one of the others, asking where I was. Confused, I put him on speaker, and that's when I heard it, a low laugh, not anyone I knew, coming from a stall. Someone was standing on the toilet, peering over the divider. I froze. Terror froze me in place. I screamed, my voice echoing, calling for my friends. The person slammed the stall door. Footsteps followed me down the hallway. I ran blindly toward the stairs, scrambling over buckets and boxes, tripping, falling, but never stopping. I could hear whispers, low, guttural, but no words I could understand. Finally, I made it outside, over the gate, and into the safety of the night. My friends were scattered, but alive. The school loomed behind us, silent and waiting. We never went back. None of us ever discussed it again in detail. But the memory stayed. The darkness in the basement, the laughter from the stall, the dragging of heavy containers, the feeling of being watched. It haunted me for years. The lesson was simple, though harsh. Curiosity can be deadly, trust is fragile, and some parts of your high school are never meant to be explored. Even now, years later, when I pass the old building, I feel that same chill, as if someone or something is still there waiting for the next person foolish enough to wander alone. It started like any other Friday night in my sophomore year at Southern Lehigh High School. My friends and I had grown bored of staying home, scrolling endlessly through social media, and decided on what seemed like a harmless adventure, sneaking into the school after hours. We'd always heard the stories, the whispers about weird sounds in the hallways, the janitor who swore he'd seen moving shadows, the ghost stories that got passed around during homeroom. But nothing could prepare us for what actually happened. The plan was simple, or so we thought. A broken basement window gave access to the old music wing. A small metal gate in front of the steps slowed us slightly, but it added to the thrill. Crawling through the narrow window, we landed in the dusty basement hallway. The smell of mildew strong and immediate. We each had a flashlight, though the beams barely cut through the darkness. The faint red glow of the emergency exit signs was all we had to guide us. "I swear," Brandon whispered, "if one of you screams, I'm leaving you behind." I roll my eyes. Yeah, just stick together." At first, we explored the familiar places. The band storage rooms filled with instruments, the janitor's closet with mops and buckets, classrooms that always seemed empty. But the further we went, the stranger it felt. The basement seemed endless, the walls narrowing, doors appearing where there shouldn't have been doors. I chalked it up to shadows and nerves. We decided to split into pairs to cover more ground. I went with Roland. The two of us headed toward the old science wing. The hallway was narrower, fluorescent lights long dead, and the faint hum of the building seemed louder than usual. "Dude, do you hear that?" Roland whispered. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I realized it was footsteps. Not ours. He was standing right next to me, but soft, shuffling steps coming from the far end of the hall. "Probably one of the others," I said, trying to sound confident. But even as I spoke, my stomach knotted. The sound didn't stop. We followed it, slowly, carefully, until we reached a classroom door, slightly ajar. Light spilled out from inside, an eerie yellow glow that made the shadows dance in unnatural ways. Roland nudged me. "Check it out." I peeked through the crack. The room was empty, or so it seemed. Then I noticed something on the floor, a small, scuffed notebook. Pages were flipping as if caught in a breeze, but the air was still. I stepped inside, and the door slammed behind me. My flashlight flickered. The notebook fell shut, as if it had been waiting for me. Meanwhile, the rest of the group had their own misadventures. Chris and Brendan went into the bathroom, thinking it would be funny to hide in the stalls and scare each other. That's when the first real terror began. A low, guttural laugh echoed through the empty room. They thought it was one of us at first. But when Chris poked his head out, no one was there. "Guys, where are you?" he whispered into the darkness. A hand suddenly clamped over his shoulder. He yelped, spinning around. Nobody was there. Just shadows. Just nothing. They bolted, tripping over each other, and ran back toward the basement hallway, screaming my name. Back in the classroom, Roland and I tried the doorknob. Locked. Our lights flickered, casting long, sinister shadows across the walls. I could feel the air getting colder, heavier. Something in the room was moving. Not human, but definitely aware. I shined my flashlight toward the back corner. A figure crouched there, face obscured by shadows, eyes reflecting the weak light. My body froze. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then it moved closer. Slow, deliberate, the kind of movement that makes you feel every muscle tighten in fear. "Roland, we need to get out," I whispered. We tried the door again. Locked. The windows were too high to reach. The only exit seemed impossible. Meanwhile, the others were regrouping. Chris, Brendan, and two more of our friends, Alex and Jordan, had reunited in the main hallway, panting and shivering. "Where's my name?" Alex asked. "I don't know." I heard Chris whisper, voice shaking. They were in that classroom. "Something's wrong." We decided to split again to find each other. Bad idea. The hallways seemed to stretch, twist, and rearrange themselves. A room we passed a minute ago wasn't there anymore. The stairwell that led up to the main level had disappeared. Every exit sign pointed in a different direction. The building wasn't behaving like a building anymore. It was alive. In the classroom, Roland and I huddled together. The figure in the corner moved closer, the faint outline of a face now visible, a pale, expressionless mask, eyes hollow. I fumbled for my phone. Signal. None. Nothing. Just us and that thing. Then it spoke. A whisper, dry and cold, barely audible. "Why are you here?" I tried to answer, but my voice cracked. Roland whispered, "Don't say anything. Don't move." The figure tilted its head as if studying us. Then it lunged, not at us, but toward the door, twisting the handle. It opened. Slowly. We bolted into the hallway. Shadows seemed to follow us, stretching, growing, and whispering. Every turn led to another dead end. Every doorway was a trap. We finally regrouped near the main stairwell, or at least what we thought was the stairwell. The others were shaking, tears in their eyes. Chris muttered something about a face in the window, watching us. I looked up. A shadow moved across the second-floor windows. Slowly, deliberately. "Run!" I screamed. We sprinted down the hallway, past classrooms, offices, and gym doors. The building seemed intent on keeping us inside, corridors looping back on themselves, stairs disappearing just as we approached. Finally, we reached a door that led outside. Pushing it open, cold night air hit us like a wall. We didn't stop. Not until we were on the parking lot, panting, soaked in sweat, hearts racing. Later, when we recounted the events to each other, we tried to rationalize. Shadows, nerves, adrenaline. But the photos we took on our phones told a different story. In one hallway, a faint figure appeared in the background, tall, pale, faceless. In another, something crouched in a doorway, impossible to identify. We didn't show them to anyone else. No one would believe us. I never returned to that school at night again. Not for fun, not even curiosity. Even now, when I drive past the building, I see shapes in the windows at night. Shadows that don't belong to anyone inside. Looking back, I understand one thing clearly. High school is a place full of mundane horrors, cliques, stress, awkward moments. But some nights, some places hold a darkness that doesn't make sense. The broken basement window, the shadow in the classroom, the shifting hallways, whatever we encountered wasn't human. It wasn't friendly. It waited. And it taught me a lesson I'll never forget. Some doors should never be opened. Some windows should never be crawled through. And some schools hold their own secrets, waiting for those foolish enough to wander inside.